This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Our underground network is standing by at the drop zone to distribute.
The transmission is being jammed. Looks like the Empire came out to welcome us.
Attention, Rebel Convoy. This system is under Imperial control. Stand down or be destroyed.
What a surprise. Star Wars Sabers and Scoundrels.
Starships.
Carabast.
Yeah.
Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. The Scoundrels Special Edition.
Greetings, Scoundrels. We're back. And welcome to the Scoundrels Special Edition. If you haven't heard a Scoundrels Special Edition before, then permit me to explain what we are doing. This format might seem a little different compared to our usual shows. That's because it is. Our Scoundrel Special Editions are between the show's bonus episodes, and we usually use them to focus on an episode of Rebels or something else that just doesn't fit into our regular schedule. With that formality out of the way, I'm happy to introduce my friends and co-hosts, Darth Taxus and Jay Krebs. How's it going, guys?
Going really well. I cannot wait to talk about these episodes, talk about all the feels.
Definitely.
This is Taxus. This was a really intense couple of episodes.
All right. Well, I'm Dennis, since I did not introduce myself. But on this episode, we are talking the two most recent episodes of Rebels, Wolves and a Door, and A World Between Worlds. So, Taxus, let's get things started. If you would please sound the spoiler, as this is a full spoiler discussion. And just like last time, there are some huge spoilers. So with that out of the way, here is our episode summary for Wolves and a Door, and bear with me because there's a lot to go through. After sharing the tablet that the Lothals left for him, Ezra convinces Hera, Seb, Sabine, and Chopper they need to protect the Jedi Temple on Lothal. The problem is that they are trapped very far to the south. Ezra has a solution, though, and he summons Lothwolves through the Force that carry them, presumably through the Force, to the outskirts of the temple. They walk the rest of the way and discover the Empire has excavated the area around the temple and have extracted many of the artifacts that were inside. In addition, the temple sealed itself off from further intrusion. Using Scout Trooper armor, Sabine and Ezra infiltrate the extraction area while Hera and Seb keep watch. Chopper intercepts a transmission from Emperor Palpatine to Minister Varys Hayden, and they discuss how the imagery is similar to that of the Mortis gods, and the fate of Kanan has altered the fate. How the fate of Kanan has altered the fate of Lothal. Sabine and Ezra discover a mural depicting the Mortis gods, and Ezra figures out how to open it through the Force as the Empire closes in and captures Sabine. Okay, so that was very inartfully read, but
It's
we'll
okay,
start
man.
with you.
You did good.
Thanks. Let's go around the table real quick and give a brief 60-second or left overall thought on the episode. Jay, what did you think?
Well, I thought this was really well done as far as, of course, setting things up for the second episode in this little arc that we had for the evening. But it was really great to see how Sabine was able to use her knowledge of being able to interpret different symbolization and then, effectively helping Ezra to open the door. And it was also great to see Hera opening herself up once again to being trusting with the processes that be, and we'll get into that a little bit more, I'm sure. And also just seeing Hayden with his interactions with Sabine as well, and just the build up to getting to the world between worlds. So I thought it was a really well done episode.
Taxus, what did you think?
Well, how last time we were talking about how the last episodes were kind of like leaving us, I feel weird, mystic, dirty, I need to be cleansed. Well, this gave me a little cleansing. It kind of solidified a little bit of okay, I see what you guys are going for now with this whole thing. And, there's some stuff that I'll say I thought was pretty cool about it, I do have kind of a hot space opinion that later that we might discuss. That's kind of an overall concept that I took away with it, but I'll save that for later.
Okay. Well, I'll start off by saying that I had to warm up to this episode a bit, and I liked it a lot better after having watched the second episode that we're going to discuss later. But what grabbed me about this on the second viewing was how much of a Indiana Jones vibe I got when it kind of like at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they've made it to the island and they're getting ready to open the Ark, and there's all this kind of standing around, or even just on the excavation sites, this idea that they're finding something and they're having to interpret some things. And, they even, some of the Kiner's music cues throughout this episode kind of contributed to that feeling as well. It was very mysterious and perhaps maybe drawn out a little bit longer than I needed, but this almost let me rephrase. Having read the Rebels Recon, this was originally going to be one episode with the second episode that came, and they decided to split it in two. And it's I'm glad they showed these on the same night, because this episode, I think, had a little bit of difficulty standing by itself as an episode. I'm glad that we got the second one right afterwards. But let's kind of dive into some of the things of the episode. So, Ezra is convincing them that they need to get to this temple and protect it, and he shows them the tablet that the Lothals left. And we all know from having seen the trailer for this part of the season that they were going to find this mural with the Mortis gods, or the ones, or whatever you want to refer to them as. And this tablet's got the 3/5 on it. And so Sabine, as you were saying, Jay, applies some of her art knowledge and her cultural knowledge to figure out that this, what the importance is there. To me, that seemed perhaps a little forced. As great as an artist as Sabine is over the course of this series, I just didn't. This is almost archaeology. I just never got that sense from her that she had that type of archaeological knowledge. Am I out of line, or what did you all think about that?
I think that actually it makes total sense, because being an artist, she understands symbolism. And in artistry, a lot of what that is all about creating feelings and thoughts from symbols. And even when she was talking to Hayden, and he said, "Oh, these are the ones, the Father, the Son, and the Daughter." And she said, "Yeah, they're archetypes." So she understood what the symbolism was. So it's obvious that she's got a lot of knowledge of not just art, but of history as well. So I totally believed and bought into the fact that she was that knowledgeable.
Yeah, it's almost like he was looking for the final musician to play the cymbals for Haydn's orchestra.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what she did. Yeah, I think he was trying to. I don't know. You're right, Dennis. To a certain point, it's sort of like, well, what are we going to do with Sabine while this is happening? You know what I mean? Well, we got to have something happening with her, and well, I know she can get captured and she can be kind of in there being interrogated or something, which. It's okay. I didn't mind that so much. I thought that she was, you're right. I mean, she's interpreting the symbols and the colors, and maybe even, well, I don't know. I'm not an artist, but, it didn't really bother me that much, that little side story.
Yeah, it was like I said, it wasn't a major point of contention. It just, while I agree with everything you said there, Jay, sometimes, to me, it's we have themes that carry through all of art, but there's also an archaeological component to this that just, I don't know. I just never got the vibe that was something that she understood. Especially, I don't know. Well,
she even said she didn't, right?
Yeah.
Kind of in uncertain terms.
But I loved her attitude towards Minister Hayden Malcolm McDowell came back to voice, it's like, because I'm smarter than you. I understand this because I'm smarter with you. And, and I think he kind of played down his own knowledge a bit about what was going on to try and draw things out of her and let her put on this air of superiority. I mean, it's an effective interrogation technique in order to draw information out of someone, is pretend that you don't know as much as you do, or do the opposite and pretend that you know more than you do. So he went that way. It's kind of hard to talk about this episode without getting into the next one. So why don't we touch on a few last things here, and then we can, because I think the meat of the hour of TV that we watched this past Monday night is really the second episode.
Yeah.
But what did you all think about the mural coming to life and then creating that portal?
Wow, the 2D and 3D animation was just insane. I mean, the way that they were able to incorporate the two of them, I mean, just looking at it from the technical aspect, that, you know, Ezra standing there, he looked real. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to as he was watching the mural moving and that type of thing. I mean, that's something that we haven't really seen before. So it was pretty intense as far as, you know, what I was concerned. But it was really neat to see how that whole idea of the Mortis trilogy, if you will, came back into play. But my question is, how did Lothal end up with this temple to the Mortis gods?
Magic.
And, you know, I'm getting ahead of myself, obviously, because in Clone Wars, obviously, with the Mortis arc that we had, there was no necessarily, you know, planet that they were on. It was just kind of there. It was another world between worlds. So
yes, and
you know,
I was feeling really good about having a whole bunch of Force mysteries wrapped up until you said that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jay. What about you? That's okay. What about you, Taxus? What do you think about the portal and all this?
Yeah, I mean, I actually really liked the way the wolf animation went. It was kind of freaky a little bit, and I liked how they were all kind of looking at him. And it was like, oh, you know. But then whenever they started running, I thought it was really trippy. I mean, it looked really cool. And especially when they started running in a circle and doing, you know, the portal thing, I was like, oh, that's what was on the mystery card from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know? I was like, oh, wow, okay. And, yeah, I kind of, even though I recognized that, I didn't quite piece 2 and 2 together, you know? You might say.
Sure.
Yeah, but
yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting because they did, during the Rebels Recon for this, they did mention how they hired a 2D company to do that part of the animation for this episode. And I was thinking about it, you know, not that I know that much about animation, but it makes complete sense because this is something drawn on the wall. You wouldn't necessarily want to portray that part of it in 3D, although those wolves, when they did leave the side of the rock, they wrapped around kind of that edge, and walked off, which I thought was very cool.
Yeah.
You know, it was the I'm not entirely certain I got why it was that it was the daughter that they needed to open it, and then later the son that they needed to close it. You know, they did the whole, you know, they matched the hand movement with the daughter and used the Force, and then she, you know, moved her hand and looked to the side, and then the father pointed off to the same side, and then the wolves got up and moved, and they formed their portal, and that's how the whole thing got started.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about the head movement either thing.
Well, for me, you know, the daughter always symbolized light. So when you open a door, you for me anyways, I think, okay, you open a door, you open it to light. You know what I mean? You close the door, it becomes dark.
Okay.
I don't disagree with any of that, but the way Sabine said it, made it sound like there was supposed to be something that was a bit more obvious than that. But, you know, I think the difficulty this episode had was that it needed to be about 22 minutes long. And there was a lot of things that they were trying to do across these 2 episodes, the bulk of which I think happens in the next episode. And so I'm not going to use the word filler on this, but I think they kind of had to expand some things here.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of, some things got drawn out and some lines got in here that I think maybe confused things a bit more than if, say, between these 2 episodes, it was 36 minutes as opposed to 44 or something like that.
Yeah.
But at any rate,
one of the things I did really like, and I know we kind of touched upon it, but when they did intercept Palpatine's transmission, I liked how they conveyed the sense of, oh no, you know, like we just opened the wrong door to the wrong boss. You know, we shouldn't be messing around with this. We need to get out of here. You know, this is really bad. And yeah, I really liked that. I liked how you know, it took Ezra do some convincing to let him go and do what he needs to do. And you know, I know I liked how it had kind of the image of Kanan there, but it wasn't really a force.
That's what I was going. Yeah. That's the last thing I wanted to touch on there, is that, you know, Hera had her moment of doubt about this whole thing, that she was allowing her, you know, in the previous episode when she was grieving for Kanan, she had that moment where she was talking about how Kanan didn't want to get wrapped up in this rebellion, and she insisted, and now he paid for it. And now she's having a similar moment of doubt here, where they're invading this excavation site, and she wants to pull them out. And then she has a moment of doubt, and then that image of Kanan shows up over her shoulder, and at least the image, and I'm using this word very carefully, puts his hand down on her shoulder, and she reaches up and touches it.
Yeah.
And so then she overcomes that doubt and says, okay, let's do this. What did you two make of that? Was that actually Kanan reaching out through the Force? Was that her imagination? What exactly was going on in that scene?
Well, I guess there was something that was said that as far as him being a quote unquote Force ghost, that no, that was not the case. So, it's totally understandable that Hera is going to feel some doubt, because she just lost Kanan, and now she's putting her other loved ones essentially into a similar situation, and Zeb saying they'll be fine. And she said, I always used to believe that. So I think for her, it was more, almost like, what would Kanan do? And so she was comforting herself just like anybody else would that has lost a loved one, that maybe looked to them for comfort or looked to them for guidance. And then now that they're gone, they think to themselves, well, what would that person want me to do? What would they want me to say? How would they want me to handle this? So it wasn't, a physical manifestation of Kanan so much as it was an emotional one, of her feeling that he's always going to be looking over her shoulder. He's always going to be there for her, no matter what, even though he's gone. And how would Kanan want me to handle this? That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, let me ask you this. Was there a lot of shoulder touching between the two of them in the show? I mean...
Yes.
Okay, well, there you go. You know what I mean? She was
there
just thinking...
actually was.
Yeah, see, I was thinking there was. Yeah, so I'm thinking back, like, that's her just kind of imagining something they've done before in the series, so we kind of get it, because it's in our heads,
Whether it be a shoulder or a forearm, or something of that nature, there was always that touching reassurance between the two of them when it came down to those major moments of doubt.
Yeah. So how come do you think it was Ezra and Sabine that took up the scout trooper armor, and Hera and Zeb couldn't do it?
Because they could fit into it. No.
But not even Hera?
Well, her Laku would be hanging out. Yeah,
that's right. They would be
giveaway.
Oh yeah,
I knew you were asking for that purpose only. Okay.
But no, it makes sense that Ezra would go, because he's the one that has the Force, to be able to open the portal in the first place. And Sabine had the knowledge of the artwork to be able to possibly interpret it, and she, had the image of the stone. So I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Somebody should just cosplay as a Twi'lek trying to pass themselves off as a stormtrooper. That'd be great.
You work on that. You go right ahead and work on that.
Don't tell me what to do.
Teeth.
All right. Well, I want to get into the next episode real. Because there's a lot to discuss there.
Yeah, sure.
So let's go around the table real quick, give a final thought, and if you want to offer a grade on the episode, go ahead, Jay.
Okay, so I really felt like, I don't feel like this episode was a filler in any way, shape, or form. There are so many things that needed to be tied up and tied together in order for us to get to the next episode. We were able to see Ezra interacting with the Lothwolves again, which again makes total sense, because he has such an affinity for natural things and speaking with animals, and just the idea of he and Sabine being the ones to go to the portal and try to open up the door, and just the interaction between Zeb and Hera and the whole Ghost crew, their trust level. They didn't even question when Ezra said, okay, we need to get on these big wolves and we're gonna go here. They just trusted him. So it's just that, again, that whole idea of family and that whole idea of trust, and that this is our mission and this is what we need to do. So I really, really enjoyed this. And I know for some people, it wasn't so much of a favorite episode, but I would definitely give it at least a 92% for me. So it's like, it's an A- for sure. I loved it. I thought it was very artfully done, storytelling wise and technically wise.
Yeah. So quick hits. Cool Emperor Palpatine's voice, and it's Ian McDiarmid. Let's see. Cool, the animation, though I know some people might not have liked it, but I thought it was really awesome. You know, I was like, whoa, far out, man. Are those wolves moving for you too? You know? Let's see. I kind of liked Haydn. I thought it was that was pretty cool. I like the fact that hey, the Imperials finally used their protocol and figured out 2 people had infiltrated their camp. You know, yeah. So, but I'm going to reserve a score because I really feel like you said, Dennis, you really can't separate these two from each other. I think this was like the big setup, and also an excuse to make music that sounded like something from Indiana Jones.
All right. I cannot tell you how frustrated I was with this episode the first time I watched it, because it starts off with them getting on the wolves, and that was cool. They're riding wolves, and I loved Chopper's little reaction, like, "Oh, what about me?" And this is so typical. And then the wolf bites him and picks him off, and they run. But then they start sinking into the ground through the Force, and we have this tunnel vision that looks like we're going through hyperspace, and we're hearing all the voices. And the entire time, my head is like, great, more Force mysteries that we're never going to get the answer to. And then as we proceeded through the episode, I kind of felt that's where we were going. And when this episode ended, I was like, this is going to sound harsh, but I was like, C-. After I saw the second episode, though, I revised my grade for this one up to a B+. And I went back and some of the other episodes that I've been complaining about this past season that I was due to the ambiguity and this fear that we weren't going to get answers. I raised in my mind, I mentally raised my grades for them as well. This is an episode that I think is very difficult to watch without the second episode, World Between Worlds. And that's just the way I see it. This is better. This is not one I feel like you can pull apart from the second episode and have it feel like a complete story. Have it feel like to me, it just isn't as satisfying without the second. With that being said, I also liked the animation on the wall with the portal. I did like hearing Minister Haydn and Ian McDiarmid's return as Emperor Palpatine. So...
Can I ask you guys a real quick question I meant to ask earlier about the convoy and the wolves and everything? Do you feel like the convoy, if it is a representation of the daughter, do you feel like the wolves are a representation of the son? I mean, thinking about their eyes too, like with that weird design going down their eyes and such, and that, when the portal was opened, the father joined hands to the son, right?
Well, he didn't actually join hands. He just pointed over that direction.
I thought it actually covered the son's hand.
Well, I mean,
it
looks like he's standing in front. Okay, well, that's what you meant by joining. I perhaps, but it's opposed to clasping his hand. Yeah. But he did point that way. And as Jay was pointing out earlier, at the end of we'll get to that. But later in this episode, we'll see the sun closing the portal, so to speak. I think that's a possibility, Taxus. I really hadn't given it much thought, but in the interest of time, why don't we come back to that after we get through this World Between Worlds discussion here. All right, and once again, bear with me because there's even more going on in this episode, so this description is a little bit longer. Ezra emerges from the portal and finds himself in a dimension seemingly set among the stars. Portals and bridges seemingly hang in midair and are almost invisible against these stars in the background. Meanwhile, Sabine is interrogated by Minister Varys Haydn on Lothal, who attempts to direct clues and information about the portal out of her while Hera, Zeb, and Chopper keep an eye on the excavation site. Haydn describes the portal as a door to a pathway between all time and space. Ezra wanders the paths in this world between worlds and comes across a convoy hovering over a portal that he recognizes a presence when Ahsoka is around. When Ezra looks into the portal, he sees Ahsoka's climactic duel with Vader, and at the last second, he rescues her and brings her through the portal. After Sabine proves uncooperative, Haydn has Death Troopers reinforce him as he attempts to drag information about the Mortis gods and the temple out of her. Back in the World Between Worlds, Ezra explains to Ahsoka what has happened, and Ahsoka explains that Kanan's will may still be at work through the Lothal Wolf, as he is part of the Cosmic Force now. Believing he can rescue Kanan, Ezra rushes off to another portal and witnesses Kanan's final moments. And realizing what Kanan's final lesson was, he watches Kanan perish again. Then, to make matters worse, the Emperor opens another portal and begins attacking Ezra and Ahsoka with a new force power. Ahsoka and Ezra escape and retreat through the respective portals. On Lothal, Zeb and Hera sabotage the mobile command platform and rescue Sabine, creating a diversion as Ezra escapes from the portal. Ezra seals the portal and they make their escape as Ezra passes out. When he awakes, all traces of the temple have vanished. So there you go. That's the summary of the second episode. And there's a lot happened in this one and a lot to digest. I'm not even going to go to our initial reactions here because I want to get into all this here. So Ahsoka's back. Fantastic.
Yay.
I've been been hoping to find out exactly what's going on with her fate since we saw the end of season 2 of Rebels. What did you all think about the way that she was brought back into the series?
Wow. Just wow. Never expected that it would have been that way. But what a great piece of storytelling to be able to tie everything together. And just the fact that she was able to help Ezra learn a lesson and still not really damage the fabric of time. Because when she goes back, of course, I'm skipping ahead, but when she goes back, you see her walk down the steps, which is the exact point where we all thought we saw her walking down the steps. And of course, that was a big point of debate and controversy at the end of season 2. So it's bringing a lot of things back full circle, but yet also making us yearn for more and look for more connections while we're at it. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Okay. Let me say that I liked it. I like the fact that it opened the portal, and man, I forgot how intense that duel was and just how visually awesome that was. And to me, that whole, that Malador, was that what it was? Malachor. Yeah, that those episodes are probably some of the best in the series, Certainly. And it reminded me of that. Love the fact that she saved. Here's my hot space opinion. Is this whole series called Rebels, or how can I make a 4-season-long series, bring Ahsoka in, and then figure out how to make her live so I can bring her back through something else? By Dave Filoni.
No, I think it's still called Rebels.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying? It's like...
Well, okay, you're right. That is definitely a hot space opinion. And I don't...
Not that I have a problem with it. It's just, it's like it kind of felt like... So that's the whole point of him sacrificing them, getting into this temple, is just so they can go save her from Vader? And that's what happened?
Not at all. Not at all.
There's so much more going on in this whole episode than just Ahsoka being saved.
Well, as Jay just said in her initial reaction here, Ahsoka helps Ezra interpret Kanan's final lesson in this entire thing.
Right.
Way to get this conversation off on that tangent. She comes through. I mean, Ezra has always had this weakness that he wants to do whatever. I call it a weakness, but you also might call it an admirable quality. He has this desire to always protect his friends, and when he saw that portal, he saw one of his friends in danger, and so he pulled her in at the last second. And it was a very. This is where I agree with all the compliments on the storytelling. There is this final lesson, and I guess we might as well go there. This lesson that Kanan found where he was needed most and made that moment count. He made that sacrifice, and Ezra was about to undo all that. And right, so, we see at the end of this episode, he realizes what it is that he has to do. He's finding that moment that he's needed most and is preparing to commit to it. Whereas, I was very surprised after season 2, and actually during parts of season 2 and then going through season 3, that we didn't get more of this Ezra temptation theme going through there, where this desire to protect his friends, this desire to free and rescue Lothal was going to possibly raise these dark side of the Force influences. And I kind of feel like we were starting to look at that, because how many times did we complain in season 2 and then season 3 about Ezra just wasn't learning these lessons about doing the right thing and learning the lessons that Kanan was trying to teach him, and looking for these paths to do more than he was capable of, and putting things outside his mission in putting an undue focus on them. And he finally got it in this episode. He had this opportunity. He could have saved Kanan. It may have created some sort of paradox, as Ahsoka pointed out, but he listened to Ahsoka where he may not have been willing to do so earlier, and he did as hard as it was to do, and as gut-wrenching as hearing Hera scream for Kanan again must have been. He did what he had to do. He did the right thing.
He did. And I have 2 points actually that I want to make. One is that was for Ezra, that was his Anakin moment. Because you hear him say, but I can save him. I can save him. Mm-hmm. It's almost like hearing Anakin say to Padme, I will save you, Padme. And not giving in to that temptation of using the powers that he has in order to do something he wants to do, in order to sacrifice what he should do. And in this case, he did what he should do because Ahsoka was there to guide him. And here's my point number 2. Call me an Ahsoka apologist, but her name is Fulcrum for a reason. It's not just a code name, but I truly believe that she has been the fulcrum point for so many things that have happened, not just in Rebels, but even back to the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about how when she left the Order, that was a turning point. I mean, that was a tipping of the scales in a lot of ways, for Anakin especially. And so, you might say, oh, is this just Dave Filoni's, excuse to bring her back? But the fact of the matter remains is that she is a common thread that binds all of these things together. Mm-hmm. At least for me, she is. So that's the way I look at it.
Also,
I was going to say, Taxus, this notion that somehow this entire series was a way of bringing Ahsoka back in as a bridge to another series with Ahsoka, I really think that discounts the story that was being told this entire time. I mean, because how many episodes has she really shown up in?
No, since season 2. I mean, she hasn't been in anything other than maybe being named here or there.
Of course, it wasn't like a fan reaction because they obviously built this in from way back when, right? Because we had those cards that he released through the Topps trading cards and all that. But
to that point, sorry to interrupt, but to that point, I will say this, that when my initial reaction, and I didn't answer this question, I posed it to you two, but I didn't answer it. It took me a moment of reflection when I saw her get dragged back through that portal, if this is something that made sense, and if this is something that was actually set up at the end of season 2, if Dave Filoni actually knew what he was going to do with her at that time, or if this was something he made up as we got to this season. And it wasn't until I went back and thought about those Star Wars card trader collecting cards with that image of the the wolves on the border and things like that, that it dawned on me that he must have known at that time, or had a pretty good idea of what it was going to be, because there was a part of me that did think for a second, is like, this I was like, is this really what the plan was, or was this something that was convenient? But I think having after I thought about it for a moment, I do think that there was more of a plan in there. But I could see, if you didn't know about those cards, where you might have thought that this was that this was convenient, for lack of a better word.
Well, okay, and so not only that, but I know that sure, Ahsoka guided him, but you might say like there were a lot of voices along the way. And some of the
definitely a lot of voices.
I guess you would. And that the things that they were saying were kind of the lessons that Ezra finally, you know what I'm saying? You were saying that's the difference between he and Anakin, right? And Ezra was okay to let go. You know what I mean? And in the end, we see that he understands that, hey, just because I let go of Kanan doesn't mean Kanan's gone, per se, or so to speak. And so the other thing is, though, I was thinking from Vader's perspective when he was walking away from the temple in season 2, we're all thinking, oh, he's ticked off. No, now that I look back at it, I bet you he was thinking, what the heck just happened? Because all of a sudden Ahsoka just disappears, in the middle of their fight. And wouldn't you think Vader's just kind of leaving, scratching his helmet? Wait a minute, what did I just see? Well,
the other thing is that I'm I'm going to admit I'm a little confused if this changed history,
Yes.
or if it actually, because this is one of these time paradox type of things. It's like, up until this moment, was it that Vader had killed Ahsoka, but then at this moment, Ahsoka changed Ezra rescued Ahsoka and then thereby changed the past. And the thing is, we know that this place, and I don't want to spend much time on this because we could do nothing but theories on this for an hour.
Sure.
But but this place that Ezra is in has been described as a world that is between all times and all spaces, and Minister Hayden explains that whoever controls this, or maybe it was the Emperor, basically controls the universe, and this is why the Emperor wants it so bad. Minister Tua said back in season 1 that the Emperor's discovered something else on this planet, and they had said that is using it. He's got his factory set up in there. Like, no, there's another purpose.
Dennis,
something more. Yeah.
And
he was killed for it.
Yeah, she was. So, and that's the rebels were framed for that for a while.
Wow.
So this is
wow.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's like that's what I was saying earlier, is that at first blush, it seemed convenient the way that Ahsoka was rescued in order to get her back in there. Because I'm even thinking back to some of the interviews that Dave Filoni had done over time, and he made it sound like, if you want to think she's alive, that's on you. Right. But he knows what happens, and maybe someday he would explain what happened. But he really let people think that she was gone, and that this idea that that she's alive is something that you're doing in your heart. And I mean, I'm thinking of the way he, was having discussions with, at Rebels panels, at celebrations, and things like that. And this was, this was something, and it's going back and thinking back over all these moments. And then I went back and I watched the Mortis arc on Monday night after I saw these episodes, and this all made so much more sense than it did before.
Okay.
But here's something I want to bring up just a bit real quick. You mentioned all the voices, Taxus. We get to hear Yoda say, "Truly wonderful the mind of a child is," to Obi-Wan from Attack of the Clones. Obi-Wan says, "What is this place?" We hear Qui-Gon say something, "a conduit through which the entire force of the universe flows." Yoda's from Empire Strikes Back, "Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter." We hear Ahsoka say to Ezra at some point, "Just when you think you understand the force, you find out how little you actually know." Understatement of the year.
Yeah.
"Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose." That was Yoda to Anakin. "What you need, you already have. Unfortunately, you seem to be letting it all go." That was Obi-Wan to Ezra from last season. "I won't let him lose his way, not like I did." Kanan said that to Yoda.
Yes.
"The Force is what gives a Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things that surrounds us and penetrates and binds the galaxy together." That was Obi-Wan Kenobi, of course. We also get to hear Maz Kanata with her lines to Rey about "you already know the truth. Whoever you're waiting for at Jakku, they're never coming back." We get to hear Jen Erso. We hear Rey. We'll see each other again. I believe that. We hear Kylo Ren talking to Darth Vader's helmet. I think Poe Dameron was in there at one point, but I can't remember what he said. And then we hear Princess Leia, of course. "This is our most separate hour. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope." And then I remember that line from Anakin, "You'll never make it as Obi-Wan's Padawan, but you might make it as mine." He said that to Ahsoka.
Love that.
Yeah, so there was a lot going on there. I think some of them were very on point for everything that
now that you mention that, they're so tied into what was happening at the time. But one thing that I did notice was there was nothing from Luke, which I thought was interesting. I mean, of all the people that you would have thought that they would have put in there, where is Luke in all of this?
Well, I want to go Tashi Station because my...
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean, and again, the voices, and Rey heard voices when she was in Maz's castle, when she touched the lightsaber. Luke was able to get, if you want to call it visions or whatever, that about his friends on Cloud City. So, I mean, there's the Force always speaks through different conduits. So, I mean, it makes sense. But really quickly, I love what you said about Dave Filoni. Well, is she alive? She might be, she might not be. But I guess the whole thing is just really quickly with the idea of, did this change history? I don't think it did, because I think what this is showing us is that two possibilities can exist at the same time. So they're like parallel
Schrodinger's
time. You
Jedi.
know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect. Oh my gosh, that is a perfect analogy.
That's going to be the subtitle of this episode.
Yeah.
Schrodinger's portal. She's could be alive or dead.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
how do we know that she didn't immediately go, like, okay, bye portal, Ezra, and then turn around and take 2 steps and then slip and fall off?
Because we saw her.
So she's already dead. I'm just saying, at this time.
Okay. But the all right. Well, so some other observations here. We already talked about Kanan's final lesson. This notion that he found his purpose. He found where he was needed most, and he did what he had to do. And Taxus, you and I had this conversation last week that we believed when they set on that mission to rescue Hera that he knew that he wasn't coming back from that.
Right.
Do we think, based on what Ezra said at the end of this episode, that he knows what's going to happen on the obviously not in these terms to him, but if to us, what's going to happen next week with the season finale? Because he made these comments at the end of the episode that he knows what he's got to do going forward. So do we think he knows what his fate is coming up?
Taxus, do you want to take this one first? I need a minute to think about that.
Well, Dennis just laid out some OG knowledge on me just now with that question, and wow. Yeah, so that's interesting, Dennis, because the whole lesson was, being prepared to let go for what needs to be the greater good. And I started wondering, the voices that we heard, some of them pointed to his lesson right there and then, but then others were kind of like, you're my only hope. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I'm like, okay, why would they throw that in there? You know what I mean? That doesn't really make sense to the life lesson that he's getting right now, right?
Well, okay, let me interrupt you for a second. And here's something else I think we should keep in mind is that Jay mentioned that we didn't hear Luke, and it would be interesting to hear Luke. Okay, one of the reasons why I don't think we heard Luke is, let's think back about all the lines that we might have heard from Luke that would have had a place in this portal, that would have said something towards the Force or the conflict between the Jedi and the Sith. A lot of them would be revealing what's going to happen and would probably not help Ezra out at all.
Yeah.
You failed, Your Highness. I'm a Jedi Knight like my father before me.
Right.
That would be a big tip, and probably isn't going to help Ezra figure out where he needs to be and what he needs to do. Might actually cloud the issue. I can sense the goodness in you, the good in you, Father. Things like that I think would be kind of problematic. And sure, you could go with any one of these, whining lines that he had from A New Hope or The Empire Strikes Back, but that doesn't really fit in with what everyone else was saying and doing.
Right.
There.
Right.
Well, what about when he told Leia, but they're never really gone? I mean, that would make total sense for, him giving up Kanan if you use that quote that he said to Leia about Han. I
don't disagree with you. I think the problem was that was in The Last Jedi and probably not available, and they were putting this episode together.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Point taken. Touche.
So what I'm saying is that maybe there were voices in that were foretelling the greater good that he might have to sacrifice himself for.
Possibly.
Because he knows Obi-Wan's out there.
Sure. Yeah. He's met Obi-Wan. He's obviously not met Rey or Kylo or some of these other people, but their lines were innocuous, and so they weren't exactly giving away a fate. They could still make a point or say something with some relevance without being without clouding things, I suppose.
I guess what I'm getting to is that, is he going to end up having to sacrifice himself too?
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
It's possible. It's definitely possible. And I think the whole, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope line should be interpreted very loosely. It's not necessarily that, Ezra could interpret that as he being the only hope for being able to do what he needs to do moving forward. So, I guess you have to maybe take it not quite so literally, but maybe more figuratively.
I'm glad you brought that line up because he's met Princess Leia.
That's right.
Right, exactly.
And
so he knows the voice.
Yeah, he knows the voice. And I think, he kept walking. I mean, if I was Ezra, I'd be doing this too. I am walking in thin air when you walk out into this world.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
He's got this bridge that you can completely see through underneath your feet. I'm going to move the topic a little bit because we're beginning to run short on time. But as I mentioned earlier, I had watched the Mortis arc after seeing this. And then, of course, the next day, Rebels Recon was out. And the imagery that was this episode, we've seen quite a bit before. When Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka are in Mortis, frequently as the father and with the assistance of the son and the daughter are testing him, the floor at one point turns into that map type pattern. The sky frequently will shift all the way to a night starfield type of a thing. At one point, the reusing imagery, the daughter was leading Obi-Wan into a cave, and it had a very triangular looking entrance, the same as the exit that Ahsoka was going through there on Malachor.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Yoda, the first time we heard Yoda's voice was in this temple when Ezra was getting his Kyber crystal. And then later, when Yoda appeared to Ezra, it was against the star background, and they were having this conversation. So, it's the it took some reflection and took some thinking about it, that this really was set up from the very beginning, and that's what I've been hoping for so long with the mystery that we got from Mortis. That we still have the Bendu out there. I'll put him aside for a second. I can forgive that.
Right, I know.
But what happened with Ahsoka at the end of season 2? These various random things that Yoda was doing that we never saw before in the Force, they culminated in this episode, and it was very fitting. That was some, as you said, Jay, earlier, that was some extremely good storytelling that occurred.
Yeah, even my 15-year or my now 16-year-old said, he turned to me afterwards, he goes, "Wow, that was some good television." I'm like, "You said it, kiddo. You're not kidding."
Yeah.
But yeah, are you a little bit more of a Mortis fan now, Dennis? Because I know you were not a real big fan of that whole arc before, but are you warming up just a little?
Let's put it this way: I don't dislike it the way I used to, but I'm still not what you would call its biggest fan.
I understand.
I appreciate the story. I really do appreciate when things are tied together like that. When these things that are introduced at one point and seemingly at random without answer, and we do get a payoff for it at some point in the future. It's annoying when it takes this long for it to happen. But it's like, at least it's not lost.
That's kind of mind blowing though, because thank God it's not that. It's kind of mind blowing because you're bringing up stuff that I didn't even think about, Dennis, from season 1. This is a good long game. It's a good long game.
It is, definitely.
And let me just ask you this: if one exists, would you be willing to purchase and place into your household a Mortis father, son, and daughter clock?
Oh my goodness, I would. I am
with the father's hands.
You know me. I am obsessed with clocks. So it'd be like, take my money now. Absolutely.
The father's hands are like moving around.
Oh my goodness. And then the convor could be the little cuckoo.
Oh my gosh.
That would be amazing.
Be awesome. Okay, let's save that for That's a Wizard.
And then the wolves would be like animatronic, and they would run around the side. Oh, Taxus, you just thought of a great marketing play right there.
Somebody's got to make it.
That is so awesome. All right, Dennis, let me tell you this, in Taxus too, obviously. This is something that you were talking about earlier, about these are answers that we're never going to get, right? So our friend Mike McDonald brought up a point that what if the answers to Mortis are in the texts that Rey took?
It certainly could be. It's just when are we going to see those texts? And is that something that we believe J.J. Abrams and what's his name, Terrio, that are writing episode 9, that they would actually get into? I can't see that coming in episode 9. Possibly in another animated series at some point. I guess,
or like Forces of Destiny, even.
I can't imagine that's going to come up in Forces of Destiny.
That's a little. That's like the wrong market.
Yeah, that's a little deep. Yeah, that's a. You're right. That's a little deep.
The Mortis gods came up in the Fate of the Jedi series from Legends. I don't want to spend much more than the next 20 seconds I'm going to use to describe it, discussing them. But when Jason Solo was falling to the dark side in the Legends, there was a creature, actually I guess it was after that, there was a creature named Abeloth that existed on some other force plane, and apparently had some sort of interference with the Mortis gods at some point. And so they had a completely different explanation there. I don't believe Dave Filoni was involved with that.
Okay. Wasn't that called flow walking?
That was when Jason would go back in time.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of like the same? Oh my goodness. Talk about borrowing stuff. Okay, now my brain is going crazy.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't know that this had anything to do with that, except for maybe people having a similar idea. I don't, because I think Dave really had all this in mind.
Yeah,
he and George Lucas, because George Lucas came up with these Mortis characters,
right,
to begin with, and I don't think that was the story that they were thinking of. And I know we've seen Filoni borrow things from Legends. Hello Thrawn.
Oh, sure, yeah,
but the maybe I'm discounting it. Maybe he did, but there is that similarity there.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Wow. Good pickup.
And Dennis, you brought this up earlier. I don't want us to forget about this. How about the Emperor's appearance?
Yes, that was going to be the next thing I brought up again. I want to get back to. We're doing a lot longer on our Scoundrel Special Edition here, but
sorry, we're kind of geeking out.
But
that would be my fault. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, not at all. Not at all. There's plenty to discuss here, and like I said, you get to the first one, and then the second episode here, World Between Worlds, is just levels
meaty
on levels on top of levels here. But okay, so the Emperor shows up just when Ahsoka and Ezra are getting their wits about them after determining that they can't do anything for Kanan. And something brand new. Did he learn that from the Night Sisters, or what was that with the blue flame sending tendrils out into this portal?
Well, didn't we see that he used that in another episode where it was almost like help me out.
Was it the Yoda episode with he and Dooku when they were reaching out in the last 6 episodes of the Clone Wars? Something like that.
Maybe it was. Maybe it was.
Or was he just invoking his whatever noises,
Well, it was obviously some sort of very old arcane Sith language that he was using. So, I don't know.
Either that, or it could have been. I mean, I think that was magic. I don't think that was the Force. I think that was sorcery.
Yeah, it might be something that he actually, like you said, he borrowed out of the Night Sisters handbook.
Well, yeah. Well, I think the Force is involved, regardless whether you want to call it a Sith technique or a Sith sorceress technique.
Right.
I don't think. I don't think. Do we have any other instances of magic existing in the Star Wars galaxy that outside the realm of the Force? I can't think of anything. At least nothing.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's the Night Sisters, of course, but
I thought there was something recently. But I thought there was something recently that said that there are people that can, it's not the Force, it's magic kind of people who are manipulating.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with Zeb's storyline had to do with Ashla, and that was a version of the Force when they were going through that, really trippy, almost portal well, trying to get to the new world. So, I mean, there was kind of that whole thing too, but yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, but the Emperor, I mean, he studies so many different ancient things, and it for him to be able to kind of utilize these powers, whether it be the Force or whether it be whatever power you want to call it, sorcery or whatever, it makes sense that he would dabble in all of those things because he's trying to gain as much power as possible. And what better way to gain power than to gain knowledge over all power?
Yeah.
I guess for me, the question I have about this was cool. I don't have a problem with him using it. It's just there is a technique for grabbing someone with the Force. and a force pull and grab. I mean, we've seen these things happen before. With the Darth Vader choking someone or whatever. It was just an interesting idea that he was using these blue flames. It created these tendrils that were reaching through the portal, grab at Ahsoka and Ezra. And the blue flames reminded me of what happened to him after he was thrown down the shaft. And
okay, I was about to say that.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. That was the same color.
But this notion that he somehow needed these tendrils that he was sending after them to grab them, as opposed to just grabbing them through the Force and pulling them. That seemed. I was kind of asking because I was wondering if you all had a different take on it, but that just seemed to me that something like that wasn't exactly necessary. It was creating a new technique when there was already one that existed that we knew about would have done.
Well, one thing was that it wasn't just the Force, because Ahsoka was able to sever it with her lightsaber. So it had to have been some sort of physical manifestation of, you know what I'm saying? Because how could she have cut through it with her lightsaber if it was just pure Force power? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
sure.
Force mist.
But well, again,
maybe that's the reason he was doing it. Maybe he couldn't get there himself.
Well,
Maybe that's why he had to resort to
the other.
Right. Maybe that's why he had to resort to sorcery. When they were getting closer. I don't know.
He reached his hand through, and he was insisting. I mean, I guess he figured that they knew something he didn't, because he was demanding that they come back and and do something and help them get through there. But regardless, or maybe he would have been too. Maybe he would have been too exposed if he went through a portal himself. I don't know.
To
what?
So many mysteries.
Space, Earth.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, it's speculation.
Point, but
so they really did give us more mysteries, didn't they, Dennis?
but these are inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. Right. As far as I'm concerned, the fate of a major character is a big deal. Who are these beings that are going to show up and have some cosmic importance is a big deal. If I don't understand exactly how Emperor Palpatine's force power works in this case, I can do without knowing that, because I don't know exactly how force push works. I don't know exactly how force choke works. I don't know how force lightning works. I don't have to know. Those are just powers of the Force. But then when there's plot items that are left unanswered, that gnaws at me. But anyway, so what else do we need to cover here? Is there anything else that stood out to either one of you from this episode?
Ooh, goodness. Well, one thing I never really got a chance to, we got kind of off on a tangent as far as if this next episode is Ezra's way of predicting that he knows what's going to happen to him. I don't think he knows, but I think he has a feeling of what he needs to do. And his last, hurrah, so to speak. So I feel like he's got a sense of purpose now, and he's not doubting himself anymore. Whereas he's always kind of doubted himself. Is he doing the right thing? Is he not? But I think through what he learned by just being able to give up Kanan, that he's going to be able to move forward with conviction at this point. And he's going to accept whatever is what is meant to be. Mm-hmm. But I do think, Ahsoka did say, he said, "Come find me." And she said, "I will, I promise." So, are we going to see her again? I don't know.
Possibly. I'm wondering, with her trapped on Malachor,
how's she going to get out of there?
How's she going to get off and make it in time? So, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of wondering if the next time we don't see Ahsoka, it's her arriving on Lothal or in the vicinity, or somehow coming across what's happened in the aftermath. But anyway, Taxus, how about you? Is there anything else from this episode that stood out?
No, I think we pretty much touched on everything that, no.
Well, one
it was
thing
pretty overwhelming to me, really.
is that I thought of too, is that there's got to be another way to get into the world between worlds. There has to be.
Because, certainly.
If the Emperor was able to access, sort of being able to get there, there's got to be little fissures, so to speak, or cracks where, the temple on Lothal was not the only access point.
No, I think you're right. I think there are having watched what happened there, I think there are doors and there are windows into this world.
Ooh,
and
like
that because the only place that had the wolves running around the portal was the entrance that Ezra came through on Lothal. When I watched it the second time, I tried to pay attention to that. The rest of them didn't have any type of animation, at least none that I noticed, going around those around the portal. When we saw Ahsoka and all of them, the windows just kind of opened, and then it was there. Ezra reached in and pulled Ahsoka out, and then when he was seeing Kanan wasn't seeing him back. Mm-hmm. The Emperor called out to Ezra to show him the way. I agree with you that there's got to be other portals into that place that are probably elsewhere. They may be worlds that we just haven't encountered yet, but this is the only one that they knew about to certain. So I think you're right, Jay. I think there's other entrances, but I don't think every portal is necessarily a door. I think some of them might just be windows. That's a good
point.
But okay, well, let's wrap this up then. We've gone longer than longer than we intended, but I'm not really surprised because there's just so much to go through here.
Sure.
So Jay, what are your final thoughts on this? And go ahead and grade it if you decide to.
Oh, wow. Just again, there were so many overwhelming things and I'm so glad, that I get the opportunity to talk about this with my fellow fans because, I'm left sometimes being just dumbfounded, like drooling at the mouth. What did I just see? And so it really does help to hear both your thoughts and just discussing this with other fans and whatnot. And yeah, I'm so overwhelmed, but yet I'm so utterly pleased with the way that these threads have been tied together, and I'm so happy that Ahsoka was able to come back and help Ezra with his lesson that he needed to learn. And I gotta give this one a 99. I mean, there's not really, I could almost give it 100%, but nothing's perfect. Perfection is a lie. So, so yeah, I would like a 98 or 99. I loved it.
What about you, Taxus?
What was Jay's bid? What was that?
98, 98 and a half.
Yeah. Dennis, I'll go 100. 100.
Woo!
Yeah, I'm going to do it because I do lie.
Look at you doing stuff.
And the reason I'm doing that, it's 102 in a row. I'm sorry. We had sacrifice, now we have purpose, and we have... I mean, the way they brought Ahsoka back, I just got to admit, I went, I see what you just did. Oh my gosh, you fooled me, And so, yeah, I think it was really engaging. If you can't tell, I'm like way overstimulated about all the stuff from this. So,
Well, I don't know that I can go quite as high as 99 or 100, but it's a solid A for certain on this episode. A couple things that stood out to me is that I think this was a very carefully written episode, even just considering Ahsoka's reaction to seeing Ezra the first time when they are in the portal. Ahsoka looks at Ezra and says, Ezra? And the last time she just saw him leaving the temple, and he had long hair, he was much shorter, and now here he is
and younger,
a taller, older, more filled out character wearing scout trooper armor with shorter hair. So she's disoriented, but so there's that. So that took some thought to make sure that they got that part right. I don't know about you guys, but I was very afraid that we were getting Ahsoka back just to lose her again when the Emperor attacked. But so I was very relieved that she survived that. And I thought the conclusion in this episode, when they got away from the temple and we hear Kanan's voice saying, "The Force will be with you always." That was,
wow.
This whole. One of the whole points of this episode was Ezra learning Kanan's final lesson, and then when he got it, to have Kanan deliver that message that the Force will be with you always. Very, very well done. As I said earlier, I really like the way that this episode brought a closure to so many different storylines that started in Clone Wars, that started in the earlier seasons of Rebels. Yes, there's still mysteries out there, and as we've discussed over the course of the episode, there's other smaller mysteries now that we have to answer, but I feel like tools are there now that we can formulate theories that make sense, that work, that we aren't trying to the best theories are always the simplest theories, and now we're not having to grasp at straws. I think we have the tools in order to figure out how this thing works. If you haven't seen the Mortis arc lately. I highly recommend going back and watching that. Going back and looking at those episodes from season 1 and season 2, especially when anytime Ezra's talking to Yoda or the earlier episodes with the Jedi Temple. This, you looking back on those episodes with the benefit of this one, really brings some clarity and some understanding and some depth to those other episodes. Yeah. So, like I said, very, very well done. And, this really helped out the first episode that we saw Monday and other episodes that we saw this season that I was not as sure about because I kind of felt like we were being left out in a lurch with some of the story points then. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's going to do it then for our review of Wolves and Door and A World Between Worlds. What a conversation. Before we go, do either of you guys have anything coming out that you want to let the Scoundrels know about?
Well, for me, of course, I'm always on Coffee with Kenobi with my fashion review blogs for my Core Worlds Couture column. And I actually am going to be on an episode of Rebels Reactions for Coffee with Kenobi. And that should be coming out soon as well. So I got to talk about these episodes twice, which is awesome. But what's really great is that I got new perspectives from both times. So yeah, so that was really fun. So
stamped and trademarked S-Cubed perspective. That's right. So you can find little old me with Scott Murray, Jeff McGee, and Regina Davis on the Geek Supreme over on the Assembly Geeks Network. Every Tuesday it drops, and it's a fun little game show style content where we discuss the current geek topics, and I award points and try to think of things to trip them up and to make them lose points possibly, or hate each other in the end. And isn't that what we're all trying to get to?
Show.
Oh, thank you.
I love that show. It's so much fun.
It is. It really is. Okay. I've got a lot of different things going on right now. As far as comic reviews, you can find everything I'm writing over on retrozap.com. I am working on, as we record this, on my review for Darth Vader number 12. Go get this comic. It is amazing. I've just cannot stop writing my review. There's so much to say about it. Really, really well done. I do recommend you read Darth Vader number 11 first. But that being said, this one's really great. In addition, I am doing a series of reviews focusing on the Affinity Gauntlet series that came out in the early 90s as we're getting ready for the Avengers Infinity War movie that's coming out now at the end of April. Got moved up. So that's been a lot of fun. My second one of those should be coming out within the next week or so. I'm also doing episodes of Warp Trails with my wife. Now that the Discovery season is over, we are going back and looking at episodes from the other Star Trek series that tie into things that happened in this past season Discovery. And I would pay attention to my Twitter feed because I have another podcast appearance project type thing that's coming up that I'm not ready to talk about just yet. But that'll be coming soon. So if you want to find us all on social media, we are SQPod on Twitter and Instagram, and on Facebook, we are at facebook.com/SQPod. You can email the show at sqpod@retrozap.com. You can follow Darth Taxus on Twitter at Darth Taxus. Jay is at Joyce Krebs, and I am at DJKVER2. Speaking of RetroZap, we are a proud part of the RetroZap.com podcast network. The network currently features 21 shows, and I don't have enough time to mention all of them, but go check them out, and you can get them all on the network feed on iTunes. So that's going to do it for this Scoundrel Special Edition. We'll talk to you soon with another edition of Starship, Sabers, and Scoundrels. Thanks for listening, and until then, may the Force be with you.
He's gone now, isn't he? I mean, really gone.
Yes. I know what we have to do now. In a way, Kanan showed me. One last lesson. Goodbye, Kanan.